So, ayan, our last lesson sa midterms was about t-test, okay? So let's just have a little review. When you say t-test, it's the statistical test that we use to determine the significant difference between two variables only. So do not forget, dalawa lang ang kinukuha na natin ng difference. So we are comparing two groups here for the t-test. And take note that the t-test is a parametric test, meaning you have to make sure first that the gathered data is normally distributed and that the outcome variable should be either interval or ratio. And at the same time, we have other assumptions to be met, like the two groups should have equal variances. What else? There should be no outliers or extreme data. And we can use the t-test if we have small samples only. Like hindi siya aabot ng 30, pero pwede din naman siyang gamitin if meron tayong large samples. Okay? So our example last time was getting the difference between the level of awareness of male and female community pharmacists in terms of their, awareness nila sa, antimicrobial dispensing. So dalawang grupo lang, male and female. That is why we can use the t-test for that. Ito yung mga assumptions that kailangan ma-meet before you can really decide na gagamitin mo talaga si t-test. So normality of the distribution, equality of variance, independence of observations, meaning the two groups should be different talaga, different na mga respondents yon, and they are independent from each other, meaning the answers of the first group is not really related or associated with the answers of the members of the group 2. And then again, no extreme data, no outliers. Like if you give a test, hindi dapat na meron kang, most of the scores are between 80 to like 100, tapos biglang meron kang isa or dalawa na 10 lang yung score. That is called outlier. And then the sampling technique should be, most of the time, it should be random sampling. And then the independent variable should be grouped. Like sa male and female, group yun siya. Yun yung independent variable natin or yung minamanipulate or kinokontrol natin in the study. But please take note that the dependent variable should either be interval or ratio. Okay. Please review yung video natin on how to navigate or use the JASP software for the independent sample t-test. Now, do not forget our decision rule. Pag ang p-value of the t-test is less than or equal to 0.05, that means na merong significant difference between the two groups. But if it is more than 0.05, walang significant difference. So just like this one, 0.974, ang decision natin dito is to accept the null hypothesis. There is no significant difference between the level of awareness of the male and the female pharmacists sa antimicrobial dispensing. Etong dalawa sa baba are just used for assumption checks. Like the Shapiro-Wilk is used to determine if the collected data is really normally distributed. Pero yung decision natin dito, kailangan the p-value should be higher or larger than 0.05 para conclude tayo na yes, the data set is normal. And then the test for the equality of variances is called the Levine's test, and parehas sila ng decision rule of the Shapiro-Wilk. The p-value should be higher than 0.05 para masabi natin that the variances of the two groups are really equal. Now, the JUST software can also give us the descriptive statistics, like the mean and the standard deviation. Okay? This is how you present the data. For example, in your paper, you have there the N for, that's the sample size for both groups, and then the mean plus the standard deviation. The difference, you can also include the computed p-value and the DF. Makikita yan siya lahat dito sa ating table given by the JUST. Okay? Now, let's move on to the dependent sample t-test. Kanina, independent yon. Ito, dependent sample t-test, or mas commonly tinatawag siyang paired t-test. Okay? So, si paired t-test, just like with the independent sample t-test, is still a parametric test. So, you also have to satisfy or to meet the assumption requirements. Okay? Meron tayong kailangang i-meet first before we can really use this test. And just like the independent sample t-test, two groups din tayo dito ha. We are still comparing two groups here. But paired ang tawag sa kanya because the measurement from one group is paired with the measurement with the other one. Okay, i-pair natin sila. Most likely, you will have one group of sample here. So, the same respondents, the same subject or sample, pero you will be getting two data. Ito yung ginagamit kapag you have in your SOP questions like what is the pre-test and the post-test. Okay, like magbigay ka ng intervention, you will first measure the example blood sugar level of the sample, tapos you will give the intervention, and then after giving the intervention, you will be getting again, you will be measuring again the blood sugar level. So pre-test and post-test ang tawag dyan. And we will be comparing the measurement, the score sa pre-test and sa post-test, if meron bang significant difference. So, ang tawag dyan again, paired t-test. Kanina, independent sample t-test, hindi talaga sila, I mean, you will really have two groups and different respondents or subjects yon. Pero in making the hypothesis, parehas pa rin. Like there is no significant difference between the pre-test and the post-test. Ganun pa rin. Kung alternative hypothesis, there is a significant difference between the two groups. So if you are going to do the manual computation, hindi ko din naman ito ipapagawa sa inyo kasi masyadong complicated ito, and at the same time, marami tayong samples sa research. So umahuman. Kasi kailangan lahat ng measurements isasali natin dyan sa computation. So let's just use the software, huh? So we have here the decision rule, which is actually the same with that of the independent sample t-test. Parehas lang. Kapag ang p-value pa rin yung tinitingnan natin dito. If the p-value is less than 0.05, then you have to reject the null hypothesis kasi there is a significant difference between the two variables or two groups that we are comparing. But if it is greater than 0.05, that's the time we accept our null hypothesis. Okay? Let's have an example. The officers of the Philippine Pharmacists Association Davao Chapter conducted a research training to selected research professors. The objective is to increase the research competence of the research professor. An adapted questionnaire was used to measure the competence of the professors before and after the training. So most likely the paired t-test is used if we have like before and after na measurements. We have interventions. Kung experimental, it can be drugs or like chemical substances na magiging intervention yon. And then, kung hindi naman talaga experimental na sa laboratory, Pwede din naman experimental na like this one. We are giving trainings, seminars, and titingnan natin if there is a difference in their, for example, in their competence or in their knowledge before and after giving the training or the seminar. So the independent variables here will be before and after the training. Okay, yung competence, I mean, yung mga professors before and after the training, and what we are measuring here for the dependent variable is their level of research competence. So this is just an example, ha? So if we look at their statement of the problem or their research questions, we have here questions like, what is the level of the research competence of the professors before the training? And then we will also ask their level of competence, or we will measure also their level of competence after the training. So that will be using descriptive statistics only. We will just be getting the mean and the standard deviation here. And then we have here the last one for the inferential statistics. Is there a significant difference in the level of research competence of the research professors before and after the training? So para makita natin dito kung effective ba yung training na binigay or hindi, ma-achieve yung increase in the level of competence. So let me just like open a set of data for this. Hanapin ko lang this one. This is already re-encoded. So I will just let you see how the data for the paired t-test is encoded in the Excel. And then later we'll have the step-by-step sa JASP, paano siya gamitin. Okay, so this one are hypothetical scores. We have how many respondents? 15 research professors here, and for the test na binigay before the training, these are their scores, and then after the training, ito naman yung set of scores nila. So ganyan lang yung pagka-encode. And then remember, do not forget na just cannot read na yung naka-Excel na format. So you really have to save your file, save as, paano nga natin siya isa-save? Kailangan yung type of file is CSV. Before again, we can import this one sa JASP. Okay? And then let's go sa JASP kasi na-encode ko na nga yun. And naka-CSV format na yon. And then again, we will start here on the upper left side. And then let's open the file. Okay. Computer. Nasa computer ko yun. Research capability building. And then nakasave yon as research competence. And then open. And then automatically the file will be imported. The scores are imported now sa JASP. And then we will do the t-test. So t-test, click this one sa taas and look for the paired sample t-test. So it's important for you to know when are you going to use the paired sample t-test kasi pipiliin mo yan from the start. Pag independent sample t-test yung na-choose mo, mali na yon. Kasi hindi na natin makukuha yung tamang sagot here. Mali na yung magiging decision and conclusion natin for research if mali yung statistical tool na gagamitin. So paired sample t-test tayo again. And then we have to make sure pala that the, wait lang, i-X ko lang, na yung scale or yung type of data is correct. Diba? Iba-iba yung symbols nila. This one is for nominal, ordinal, and scale. Now, since these are scores, these are real numbers, so dapat tama ito actually, naka-scale siya. Scale refers to both interval and ratio here. And then t-test, again, paired t-test. And then you have to transfer both of the scores here. So you have here the before, and then we have the after. So isang box lang sila. Because again, this is paired t-test. The scores before is paired with the scores after giving the training. And then we have now the table for the paired sample t-test. Iko-compare yan sila. Ito yung t-score. Makukuha natin actually yung t-score if we are going to do the manual computation. And we are going to use the table I presented last time for us to decide whether to accept or reject the null hypothesis. But since we are just using the just, let's concentrate to the p-value. Okay, later kung 4 na barangay, kasi hindi pwede dito yung 4. 2 lang talaga pag t-test, 2 grupo lang talaga yung pwedeng i-compare. Okay, so later we have here the p-values class. P-value is p-value, we have here less than 0.001, meaning the computed p-value is much lesser than that. And ano nga yung ating decision rule for this? Let me type sa screen. We have to reject the null hypothesis. HO na lang ang isulat ko. HO if the p-value is lesser than 0.05. So in here, class, the p-value is really lesser than 0.05. Actually, it's lesser than 0.001. So we really have to reject the null hypothesis. Our decision here, our conclusion is, again, i-reject talaga si null hypothesis because there is a significant difference between the level of competence of the professor before and after the training. So merong effect yung training sa kanilang level of competence, as you can see in their scores, na meron talagang difference yung level ng competence nila before and after the training. Okay? So that's how we do the paired t-test using the JASP, and ganun yung pag natin ng decision. Okay? Now, if you want to see the descriptive statistics, you just click descriptives here on the left side for you to get the mean of both groups for before and after the scores. And this will also give you the standard deviation. So maliit lang naman ang standard deviation. So most likely the scores of each group class is almost similar lang sila, meaning precise. Walang outliers. So if we check the normality, okay, saan na yan? Nasa gitna. Okay, for the normality, since this is one of the assumptions that should be met before you can use parametric tests, you can see here the p-value, our decision rule, diba? If the p-value for the normality test is greater than 0.05, meaning yan, the data is normally distributed. Okay, so normal ang distribution ng data, and yes, we can really use the paired t-test here. Okay, kapag quantitative ang research kasi, our measure of central tendency talaga is the mean. Kasi marami tayong di ba? Respondents, marami tayong sample, and sa research, hindi talaga natin yan binibigay lahat in the findings. Sa appendices, nilalagay natin yung raw data. Pero sa results section, hindi. Especially if you have like respondents na 100 kabuok. Ibutang tanan sa results sa imuhang paper. Hindi yan siya like practical, and hindi yan siya ginagawa talaga. So yun yung gamit ng mean kasi it will summarize the data kahit ilan pa yung data na yan. Mean yung mostly ginagamit natin. Again, that's the most widely used measure of central tendency, yung center of the distribution. And magiging representative lang ang mean though if your data set is normally distributed, wala kang outliers. Kasi remember, hihilahin ng outliers or yung extreme variables yung mean natin. We have to make sure that the data set is normally distributed. Yung standard deviation, yes, that is also required for quantitative research because this will tell us kung how precise our data is, our data are from each other. Kung marami tayong data, baka makita din kasi natin dyan kung may outliers or may extremes pag malaki na masyado ang standard deviation. So this time, the standard deviation is just 2 point something. This one is okay. Hindi siya gaanong malayo sa mean yung mga scores na na-collect. Okay? Questions about the paired t-test? Wala. Ganito class, kapag you check the assumption like the normal distribution of the data and hindi siya normally distributed, hindi mo pwedeng gamitin si paired t-test. So ano yung gagamitin natin? It should be the Wilcoxon signed rank test. So palitan mo here on the left side, instead of the student t-test, you click the Wilcoxon signed rank test. So ano yung Wilcoxon signed rank test? That is the non-parametric equivalent of the paired t-test. Okay? Again, kailan mo siya gagamitin? Number 1, kapag the data set is not normally distributed. Number 2, if the data is not interval or ratio. Kailangan kasi talaga interval or ratio sa parametric test. Kailangan real numbers sila. So again, you can use the Wilcoxon if either ang data mo ay nominal or ordinal. So yan. Do not forget, the non-parametric equivalent of the paired t-test is the Wilcoxon signed rank test, and yung kanyang decision rule actually is the same. We will still look at the p-values and the decision rule is still the same. Less than 0.05, you reject the null hypothesis. No, the paired t-test is not applicable for 4 barangays. ANOVA yan, basta 4 groups na. ANOVA is used for comparing more than 2 groups or 2 variables. Pag dalawa lang talaga, t-test. Kung hindi parametric, Wilcoxon. By the way, yung X natin, hindi ko lang palitan ha, pero ipakita ko sa inyo yung independent sample t-test. Sa independent sample t-test, if the student t-test is not applicable, the independent sample t-test mismo, hindi natin ma-meet yung assumption, yung kanyang non-parametric equivalent is the man-Whitney. Okay? Man-Whitney. Okay? Any questions? Wala. Sure na? Sure. Wait lang ha. X muna natin ito. Okay? Sure na? No questions na? Kay magdiretso na ko sa ANOVA para sa mga grupo na quantitative pa rin ang research pero maraming i-compare. Pero hindi ko masagot yung kung ANOVA ba talaga ang gagamitin ninyo. Kasi as far as I know, isang sample lang man yung, isang sample per ano lang naman yung itetest ninyo, di ba? Hindi ko malala. Viewers, ano? 4 barangays. Okay, 4 barangays. Bali po kasi ang amin is magpa-watch ng 4 and after po. Is that included in your SOP? Na may video kayo na gagawin? Ay, ano nga ito?
Yung title po namin, ma'am, is yung influence po ng educational video sa mga millennials po, ma'am. Tapos, yun po, ma'am. Bale, nakalagay din po sa SOP namin, ma'am, na if meron pong significant difference before and after watching po yung educational video, ma'am.
Okay. Pero that is as a whole, right?
Yes po, ma'am.
Patanaw daw sa inyong SOP? Pasend daw ng SOP. Copy-paste niyo lang. Ilagay niyo dito sa chat box. Sabi na ako katuning sa...
Wait lang po, ma'am. Hanapin ko po muna, ma'am.
Sabi na ako katuning ilari siya dito sa tubig na halibog na. Kasi kung kalibog nga naman. Kaya kaisa raw ito i-test ang tubig. Diliday ni ako sa agrong scent. Ano ba ang gamitin? I cannot answer your kinsaning nangutana. An Fatima Nakilan. Hindi ko yan siya masagot pag hindi ko makita yung SOP ninyo. Give me your SOP first. I-send sa chat box para makabalo ko. Hindi ko kasi alam ang direction ng study ninyo if hindi ko makita ang SOP. So pag walang SOP, wala ding decision for the statistical tool. Daw, statement of the problem. Study aims to assess the effectiveness of educational video in delivering information regarding COVID-19 vaccines to increase vaccine knowledge of the millennial. In line with this aim, the present study seeks to answer the following questions. What are the participants' demographic profile in terms of age, gender, occupation, educational attainment? What is the level of knowledge of the participants regarding COVID-19 before, and then merong after? And then is there a significant difference between the level of knowledge of the participants before and after watching? This is paired t-test. This is automatically paired t-test for you. Kahit pahinati mo yan sila sa 4 na barangay, pagdating sa statistics niyan, kasi wala naman kayong SOP na kailangan nakahati siya sa 4 na barangay. Hindi naman tinanong sa question number 4 kung may significant difference ba yung 4 na barangay. So wala naman yon. Ang kino-compare lang naman yung sa SOP number 4 ninyo is yung score nila sa before and after watching the educational video. So yes, this group is going to use paired t-test. You can actually do this para hindi na kayo mahirapan maghanap ng statistician.
Okay po, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. You just have to get the mean first. Ang gagawin ninyo, 'di ba sa questionnaire? Questionnaire. I-total nyo yung scores nila per respondent. Yun yung i-encode ninyo dito sa Excel, and this is how you are going to encode it. Dito yung before, dito yung after. You can properly label it though. Asan yung Excel ko kanina? Kasi ito diretso lang eh. You can have another column here. You can actually add insert moment. Mali. Okay. You can, para properly labeled ang lahat, hindi kayo malito, hindi siya magka-interchange. Kasi dapat paired talaga sila, no? Asa na ang insert? Tara di ay. Insert column. Ayan. Pwede kayong maglagay ng isa pa here para properly labeled lahat. Hindi siya magka-interchange. If this is the score of respondent number 1 before watching the video, kailangan partnered talaga siya with his or her score after. Dili pwede nga kani para sa respondent number 1 tapos ang score niya after na adiri sa ika-9. Kailangan paired talaga. So you just have to properly label it. Okay, so ganon. And then you just do the math using the steps I told you sa paired t-test. So walay kurat, you can do that para wala na'y naghang gasto. Kamu na lang magbuhat. I can help you. And pwede din naman akong mag-sign. Dito. Kinsa pa, ay napaday nag-send. After kay Christine. Okay na to inyo, Christine? Si Christian.
Yes po, ma'am. Okay na po, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Christian. 65. What is the socio-demographic profile? Okay. What is the level of vaccine compliance of the manufacturing employees against COVID-19? Aray. What is the level of knowledge of the respondents? Okay, level of knowledge una. Tapos, level of vaccine compliance. Tapos, is there a significant relationship between the level of knowledge and the respondents' compliance? Ay, okay, naka-divide pala itong level of knowledge ninyo in terms of manufacturer. Ano nakalagay sa paper nyo, chi-square?
Spearman Row at ito na-suggest ni mo last time, ma'am.
Katong sa defense, sa ingon?
Wala po sila naingon, ma'am.
Spearman Row. Hindi pala ito Spearman Row. Ay, wait. Pwede pala siyang a level of knowledge kasi ito. Okay. Tapos relationship. Pwede nyo kasi siyang isa-isahin using, akala ko kasi demographic profile versus the level of compliance. It's the level of knowledge pala versus the level of compliance. So parehas silang interval na data. So you can use Pearson R. Pearson R is the parametric test. The Spearman Row is the non-parametric. Pag hindi natin masatisfy yung mga assumptions. Pero most likely, masasatisfy niyo yung assumptions dito. So again, pwede kayong mag-Pearson R. Pero, kasi maraming naka-divide yung inyong isang variable kasi, yung level of knowledge niyo marami. May manufacturer, may effectiveness or sure, maunsa pa. I think the statistician will be using regression analysis here. So instead of the Pearson R, ang sa Pearson R kasi isa-isahin mo siya, magiging manufacturer versus level of knowledge, tapos type of vaccine versus level of knowledge, isa-isahon dyan na siya tanan. Pag regression analysis kasi, isang run lang sila lahat. Isang run lahat, kahit naka-divide pa yan yung inyong variables. isang run siya, pero magiging predictive factors kasi ito. Let's see kung ano yung kinalabasan ng research ninyo. Pero pwede naman talagang Pearson R. Pwede Pearson R.
Kasi mag-top na siguro may stat ani ma'am statistician
Yeah.
siguro.
Mo ni siya ako ang ginaingon niya. Atong ilaha, Christine, okay lang to. That one is very easy for the paired t-test. Kani this one is a bit complicated since your independent variable is divided into pila ka buok. 5. 5 siya, so most likely ipastat dyan natin eh.
Mao mo gud na ang na ano jud sa mga ano namo to nang gi-suggest sa panel jud pingani jud ilang gi-suggest.
Nga naka-divide na.
Tapos ani lang pud ang number 4, is there a significant relationship between the level of knowledge and the respondents' compliance to COVID-19 vaccination? Ana lang. Tapos sa amo agong ano ma'am, sa nag-validate na po siya gi-suggest nga SOP nya murag mo alang-alang na kog change sa SOP magud kay suggest gyud siya mismo sa panel.
Unsa da ilang SOP nga gina-suggest?
Wait lang, murag nato siya gi-fix nga murag ano pa gid niya dugagan pa gid niya isa gud ma'am.
Unsa to?
Wait lang sa mapangitaon ako. Ari ma'am ay sa SOP number 3 daw na mo, what is the level of vaccine compliance of the manufacturing employees against COVID-19? Do i-change tapos ang sa SOP number 4, is there a significant relationship between letter A, the socio-demographic profile and vaccine compliance of the manufacturing employees against COVID-19, and letter B, knowledge about COVID-19 vaccine and vaccine compliance of the manufacturing employees? Ano do ma'am?
Okay. Actually, pwede talaga yan siya. Yan yung sinasabi ko na mag-spearman raw kayo kung demographic profile versus level of compliance. Pero pala, ano pala siya? Level of knowledge and level of compliance. So either mag-Pearson or mag-regression analysis. I think if I remember correctly, hindi na sinali yung demographic profile in getting the relation, sa relationship mismo. Kasi magfo-focus lang kayo sa yung dalawa lang. Yan yung I think reason. Hindi na kailangan si demographic profile. Though sinama si demographic profile dyan just to establish the parang characteristic sa population ninyo or sa sample ninyo. Pero hindi na ni-require. Taas na kayo niyo ang papel kung kung magkuha pa mag-relationship sa bawat demographic profile and the level of compliance.
Remember, ma'am, na murag nag-stay na lang mi ani kay nag-consult ko kay Sir Dan good ma'am, ana siya taasan na ninyo papel oy. Gano gid siya.
Taas na kayo ang inyong papel pag salihon pa nato ang demographic profile. Remember, isa ka table, isa ka demographic profile, isa ka table pud na siya sa statistics. So, unsa nakabaga inyong papel ana? Nya i-explain pa na ninyo isa-isa, i-discuss pa na ninyo siya isa-isa. Ayun na lang. Okay lang to. Wala man siya gi-require sa panel, so okay na na.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Anything else? It's already 6:55.